All right, hello everyone. Um, I think it's about time to get started. My name is James Clancy. I work at Xamarin. I've been here since November of 2011. Just ask the first question, are there any materials? Not right now. If you guys want, I can upload any of the stuff that I'm going to be, or that I use to Dropbox, and you can download it. But for now, no materials. But as I said, my name is James Clancy. I work at Xamarin. I have an interesting role. I work directly for Nat, our CEO, and yeah, it's kind of hard to explain what I do. I think the best explanation is, I mean, I've been called his personal SWAT team, or another good explanation is technical assistant, maybe. Um, Basically, whenever there's something that Nat needs done, or there's a client or one of our big customers that really needs help with an app, they're about to launch it, or there's just something wrong, they can't figure out why the performance isn't where it needs to be, or why it crashes after they use it for 10 minutes, or just anything he needs. Sometimes there's a product, one of our products, that just needs a little extra help. I get sent that direction to help out. And we're talking about some of the most common things that happen, and most of the time I get called in to help one of our bigger customers. It's almost always because they're about to launch their app and they tried using it on an older phone and it's unusable, or as I said, it crashes after they navigate through a few screens, or after an hour it will crash, just things like that, and they can't figure out why. And we were talking about what if there's anything that's common amongst these, or is there's certain things that if people knew, they wouldn't have these issues in their own apps. And we decided, well, let's just do a little guest lecture on Xamarin University and explain it to you guys. And we can go through some of the common things that I see as I help people. And let's figure out how we can help you prevent from having these issues yourself. To go over this, I am gonna, if so, some of the materials, I am gonna use one of the, I'm doing this more of a lecture style, so it's not the same interactive you're used to, where you have a material that you're supposed to follow along and you do it as I do it. Like I said, it's kind of like a lecture style. Feel free to interrupt me. If I miss a question, Mark is also on the line and he can interrupt me and speak just so I hear it. But yeah, feel free to interrupt me. I don't mind changing what I'm talking about, or explaining things in more detail, or showing you something you want to see. I am going to be using, for part of this, I am going to use if you want to download it, I'm going to use the best app ever it's the one from the performance class that you guys have done. I have made a couple modifications. I'm going to be writing some new code into it, and I did convert it to be a shared asset library, but aside from that, it's essentially the same class. And as I said, I'm going to be changing it some, and most of what I'm going to be doing is addition to that. So it's just a good starting point. I actually went through and put a lot of the things I do find in this as it is. I also do like coding live, so seriously don't mind asking me to write something up. We'll look at it together and see how it looks. But most of the time when I come to these customers, the first question I ever ask, have you profiled or have you looked at any tools? And I'm shocked how many people don't realize there's tooling out there. I know at Evolve we just announced our Xamarin Profiler, but there's been tooling even before that. So the first thing you ever want to do, yes, you could jump in and start looking through your code, and I could, if I'm handed, you gotta look at it from my perspective. When I'm brought into a project, or if I'm called to look at someone's code base, typically it's at the end or the last week of the project. They're about to go to App Store, launch it to the App Store. Think about some of your big projects that you worked on for 6 months to a year. Think of the size of that code base. We're talking thousands, if not millions, of lines of code. And a lot of times it's cross-platform. You're doing it on multiple platforms. And if I'm handed an app and said, here, let's figure out why this app is slow or why it's crashing, most people's first instinct is let's read code. I'm going to tell you that's wrong. The reason is That's too much work. There's no way in a couple days that I'm going to be able to read through your code and figure out the mistakes, find out what's going on. Yes, there's a couple things that I might be able to point out, like, okay, I know this screen is slow at scrolling, so I'm going to look at I can look at the code and see how you're pulling the data out and how you're creating the cells, but there's a lot more than that. Um, it might not be anything wrong with your cell creation. It could be something with the content inside the cells. A very common one I see is you put an image inside a UI table view, or on iOS or Android, you put it in a table. You have an image there, and you're using an image that's too large. It's just really big. I'm not going to be able to see that in code. So there's a lot of things that, yes, you can try, but it's a waste of your time in most cases because it's just too much work. Um, Luckily, though, we do have a lot of great tools at our disposal. I am going to focus a little bit on iOS because the iOS tools are amazing and I love them. Um, I am going to also use our profiler, which is great, and it will show you how to find some of these same exact things in Android, so we can look at it in both. But if we're looking at iOS specifically, I can always launch instruments. The easiest way to do that is inside of Xamarin Studio. There's Tools, Launch Instruments, and it will actually bring up instruments for me. And my favorite one is the Time Profiler. This Time Profiler is just great. It's going to tell me everything I really need to know about an app. So let's actually, before I get going, I'm going to be using one thing whenever you're profiling or you're really looking to find issues. I do recommend you use like the oldest device possible that you're going to support on the newest OS. If you don't have access to some of those and you want to buy a new device, great ones to look at. An iPad mini is just an old iPad 2, so with a newer screen, with a better screen. So those are really good ones to use. The iPod Touches, the new ones that are the same form factor as like the iPhone 5, the tall ones, those are actually really slow. So it's another great device to use. I'm going to be using an iPad Red or an iPad Mini today. So I'm just going to turn on Reflector so you can see what I'm doing. Here it comes. Yay! Wow, that is really big. Can I make scale half size? Yay, make this nice and small. iPads are big. So I have this app running on here, the best app ever. It's just the one that like I said, that's from the course materials. You can grab it or you can look at it, and best app ever. I'm just going to choose it from the running list. You'll notice that inside there it shows all your apps that are installed and also your running ones. So I can actually just connect to an already running app. And I can just click record. And this thing's going to start doing stuff. Yay! All right. So this app, the best app ever that's from the course material, was written intentionally to be horrible and slow and just really show off in a pretty obvious way common mistakes. Keep in mind though, typically your code base is big, there's lots of extra logic in there, and I actually just tapped on the context line just to tell you, well, this is thinking and going, I'll talk. You can see it's doing something really slow and lots going on. But like I was saying, a lot of times you're not going to see the obvious mistakes because there's so much other code in there. And there's so many red herrings, and you're just going to be looking every which way trying to find the issue. Wow, I'm trying to scroll this thing, and you'll notice how instantly it's loading a lot on scroll. Something crazy is happening, and if we were to look at this, if you've taken a class, you'll probably already know what's going on. But if I look at this view model source, that's where the data comes from. I found that I go to the context view controller, I see its sources being set up. In this view model source, let's go look at our shared code and actually find the view model for it. Does this one have one? This one uses the IEnumerable one, doesn't it? Okay, yeah, so this one creates the view model is a new enumerable source person, and Actually, am I using the wrong one? Let's just jump to that. I forgot how this one's set up. That's always embarrassing when you're presenting. All right, oh, sorry, I'm blind. So I'm using SQLite. I'm going database.contacts.table. And see, this is code I wrote, and I'm even having a hard time remembering what I did when I wrote it. So going into someone else's code base just makes it crazy. So I'm going database.contacts.table. And let's just jump into this and see what this is. This is just a normal SQLite. Yes, I'm just using SQLite. So this is a normal SQLite table. It's giving me an IEnumerable. Oh, can I enlarge the text? Yes. Sorry, I forget to do that a lot. There we go. Nice, big, pretty text. So it's just it's an IEnumerable SQLite table query, which turns back an IEnumerable. If I jump into this thing, all it's doing is it's just saying item for row, get me the element at, and get a row count and get the count. That doesn't look too crazy. I mean, why can't I just grab an IEnumerable stuff? Let's look over at instruments and see what was going on during this.
Hey, Gabe?
If I highlight a section, yes.
Hey, can you bump up the text on your editor?
I did. Did it not catch up yet?
Just so people can see it. Perfect.
Yes, I have. Sorry, yes. Do you see that it's big now? I can go bigger. Okay, I'm going to assume that it is now big enough and everybody can see it. And if I jump into the instruments and I try looking through what's going on, I typically will hide system libraries. It adds extra stuff. Yes, sometimes it's nice to see what's going on inside of those, but we really only care what's happening in managed code. Okay, I'm getting confirmation our text is nice, big, and visible. Some little quick hotkeys. I don't know if I can make this any bigger, the text in here. So I'm sorry, I think it is. Yeah, that zoom just, no, that's going to zoom the whole window. Okay, so I apologize. And I know that in GoToMeeting doesn't respect the accessibility zoom, so it's just going to be small. All right. So I can just, if I'm clicking through it, it goes through and it tells you, I know this method is what's killing us. It's using 86% of the CPU, and it took 4 seconds over that time. So this thing is what's killing us. If you use your arrow keys, you can press down and then right to expand out. And our getCell method is actually destroying this thing. And if you look, it's because, yes, SQLite does return an IEnumerable, but that's saying that every single time it has to sit there and query the table, do the mapping for every single cell. And it's really slow. I/O on these devices are really, really slow. So it's actually SQLite that's being slow, but not because it is slow, because I'm using it slow. So don't use a SQLite directly as an IEnumerable and map it to a table because it is slow, and you can just go through and see the percent, it is actually killing us. And especially as I scroll, you'll notice that it should not take that much to display every time I scroll, and it's just going to keep pulling it out. So it's really, really slow. So these tools are really great to quickly find and eliminate these issues. So there's a lot of things that you will find using a time profiler, specifically looking through that type of stuff. This is a great example of how it can be easily hidden in the code, and the tools will help you quickly find it. Now, I'm actually going to write something new quickly, and as a side note, a quick way to fix this thing is just to like to-list this thing. Instantly, this thing will now be fast. So I'm going to do that so we can use a faster version. But let's write some new code. And let's just say we're building a normal app. You have your contacts view controller, which is normal. But a lot of times you're going to want to tap on something, and you're going to want to see its details. This is actually the original code. I was just screwing around with something. But you're going to want to see its details. So you're going to set it to where you're going to want a new view controller. So Too many S's there. And let's make a contacts tail view controller. All right, perfect. And we're going to make this a UI view controller. Why did it do that? There we go. All right, so we have a UI view controller. Now, inside of our view controller, we're going to want to add a view. So I'm going to also I always do my UI programmatically. I prefer it. I like it. I rather enjoy it. I don't know why, I just do. I get tired of fighting storyboards and especially merge conflicts with interface builder files. And I do use a designer on Android because I love our designer and the XML is pretty sweet. But storyboard files and interface builder files, those things kill me. All right, so while we're doing this, let's just create a new class in here. So we're going to call this one our details view. UI view, I did go to view controller. There we go. UI view, okay. And we're going to want to pass some stuff back and forth. We're probably going to want to put our person class, person. Put our person on here so we can have access to it. Let's just say for our view, we're going to add a couple different things. Since this is a sample and I don't want to write too much code, we're just going to do a label for the name. Actually, let's make it a text box. We can edit it. Text view. Okay. First name, and then we're just going to go public. Contacts details view. And actually, we'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, so we have a contacts view, and it's going to just do add first name equals new UI text field. And let's just put, doesn't text field have a place view, or is that text field I want? I think I want text field. I get those two mixed up a lot. And this one has the placeholder text equals first name. Okay, perfect. And now I can even, to make my layout even easier, do first name dot size to fit. So now it's got the appropriate height and whatnot. So when I do my override layout subviews, I can make sure I put this thing at an appropriate place and its appropriate size. And we're also going to want a button on here. So, all right, and this we'll just call it our save button. So we have our save button and we have a first name. That should be good enough to get going. Like I said, this is something that's very common that you'll need to do. A lot of times in your app, you want to tap on something and show more detail about it. You can't show everything about an object typically inside of a little table view cell. So you want to make sure that you have room to display it most of the time. You're going to want to give that extra detail, all the notes on something. I'll just do a new UI button. I'm feeling boring today. And we'll set dot. Does anyone else create their own button subclass they use so it just takes a title so you can do it as initializer syntax? I'm so used to using my own simple button so I don't have to do this every time. Setting the text property manually. So UI control state dot normal. Save button dot size to fit. It will make it an appropriate size. So now I can just do var, we'll just move, actually, we don't even need to do layout subview because our frames now should be good. We'll just grab var frame equals first name dot frame, frame dot y equals, let's do it at like 30 or 40. We got to remember about status bar and navigation height due to iOS 8, so I'm being lazy and doing it this way. frame equals frame. Now we're just going to do same thing again. Actually, we'll just do frame var y equals frame dot bottom plus 10, and now I can just do frame equals save button dot frame. Granted, yes, I normally do not lay out my code in my initializer. It's kind of ugly, but hey, it works. Equals y. Sample code is always fun. Okay, there we go. So yes, you typically override your layout subview to set this thing up. We're probably going to want to make it to where when this person is set, let's just do implement property. We will go first. Sorry, why can't I? Why am I? Oh, haha. I see why. I'm not going to do that yet. Okay, so I forgot those are nested classes. That's why I don't have access to it. So let's override our load view, and we're just going to go return view equals new contact details view. Okay, perfect. So a lot of times yeah, that'll work. Looking good. We've got this. This will display. And before we inflate it with our person, let's just make sure this thing works. So now I can just do, I think my view model has, why is my view model, I thought these things, I can't remember, it's been a while since I wrote this, has an on tap, or no? What is this? I really didn't add an event for that on there? Oh, maybe it's on this view model one. No, that's this. Name, I did not add an event. I totally thought I did. Okay, so we're just going to add one anyway. Actually, we'll just, yeah, trying to remember exactly where this thing is to tie into it. So we have our table view extensions, that's that one. Jump back over to our contacts view, and we have our data source equals new view model data source. That's where it would be. Cell4, okay, we'll just add it in here. So now public, we're just going to do as an action. A lot of times people use events. We'll just stick with an event. We'll go with an action for now. Events are something that are very troublesome, and I'm actually going to be showing that off. That's kind of why I'm writing this sample, is to show you what happens with events. And events aren't bad, but they're tricky. You gotta be careful with them because they can definitely sneak up and bite you. And they actually cause a lot of issues with cycles or memory cycles, or reference cycles. That's the word I'm thinking of, where you make it to where the garbage collector can't collect something out. So we're starting some normal code that easily causes this. All right, so public action. Let's just do item tapped, and I'm just going to be lazy, and we're going to leave it perfectly as that. So now we can override row selected equals item tapped if not equal to null. We have we'll just do tapped, and then the object is going to be view model dot item for row index path dot row. Okay, so all I do is add an event, so when we tap, it's going to pass back that object, and it's going to ask our view model for that object. That architecture really doesn't make a difference for what we're doing here, so why am I not getting IntelliSense? Oh, because I'm on the wrong one anyway. So data source dot item tapped equals, no, I had that right. Okay, so now we're saying Why am I getting bill there? Oh, because I'm doing that in initializer syntax, which is not allowed. So I could just do item tapped. There we go. That's allowed. Now I wrote valid code. All right, so here we're just going to go navigation controller dot push view controller new contact. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to use the simulator, and we can jump to a real device if we want, but this doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm just going to run this in a simulator. That looks good. It's telling me I can make it cleaner, but we'll stick with that for right now. So now I have a contacts view. I sped it up by 2 listing everything. So now I have contacts. I tap on it. It is a lot faster now. So now when I tap on someone, okay, that's ugly. Let's make it a little bit nicer really quick. Background color equals UI color dot white. And let's just move this down to 90 just to be, I think that whole top thing's like 60 pixels, so I'm still underneath it. Also, if you don't want to deal with that offset, if you're doing something like a detail screen like this, what you can do, you can always do the stuff in iOS. So public contact details view controller, deal with the extended layout stuff. This dot edge for extended layout equals none. This will tell it. You'll note that will tell it to where now if I was to do a frame of 5, it's going to be 5 pixels below the 5 pixels below. So now when I go to my contacts, I was just doing with layout. Yay, my first name thing is not so bad. Perfect. So I have a first name thing. I have return. Return does not dismiss that. And where's my save button now? I have lost my save button. The save button has white text and no border. I hate that these things don't have borders anymore. So we are just going to do button.tech color. There's a title, right? It's set title color. There we go. Blue UI control state dot normal. Perfect, because it should be blue so it doesn't look like text. Setting the tint should also do the same thing, but now we hopefully, sorry, teaching you too much iOS rather than memory and performance like I wanted, but now we have a save button. Perfect. Okay, so now we have something that pushes, but let's tie this thing up and make it work. Now it's very common to after we do our save button to save button touch up inside plus equals. We'll send this thing here. A lot of times you're going to proxy this back over to the view controller. It's not really the view's job to deal with this type of stuff. So a lot of times it's very common to just do tag details. Put this thing here. Oops. So you're going to set its parent, right? Now, a lot of times, this is very common. Parent equals this. Actually, I'm doing that in the wrong place. I'm being crazy. I would actually do that here equals this. So I'm setting up my view, and I'm giving my view controller access to its parent. So that way I can call my void save. I'm going to call my save method on my on here. So now I can do parent.save. Okay, very common. You'll proxy your view calls back to your view controller, which at that point would either proxy it onto your view models or your shared code or however you're going to save this. And then we're also going to do, when the view is loaded, we're going to want to set up the text, but we'll just go with this for right now. We're not going to deal with setting that stuff up. So am I on the right one? I have two versions of Xamarin Studio running, and I'm making sure, and they both have the same exact project running. Okay, I wanted to be in this one because this one is the alpha channel. So let's make this thing nice and big. If I go to my context view controller, like magic, I have all my other code I wrote. So, all right, so we have our context view controller. We're setting it up. We're calling it. That should be good. Now, I'm going to run our Xamarin profiler, and let's see what's going on with this app. So let's start profiling it. Yes, that's fine. Oh, nope, I don't want to run it on the iPad. I'm just going to run it again in the simulator. When you're doing time profiling stuff, it really matters, and you do need to run it on a device because they're way slower. They really are. The I/O is horribly slow on them. Just the processor's bad. When you're using a simulator, it's x86. It's actually JITted rather than AOT. Just a lot faster. But if you're doing memory leaks don't matter. A memory leak's a memory leak regardless of where you're doing it at. So app is loaded, a lot of crazy spikes going on while it loads. Looks like it's caught up. So let's tap on our contacts. Takes us to our new screen. Now I want to look at our contacts detail. You'll notice that we've had a steady increase of memory going up. So let's look at this first one, and I click back. Now I want to look inside. Hold on. Our profiler is alpha, and so sometimes it loses data. You can see we actually don't see the text there. Sorry. I'm also using a master build from just the other day. So let me try that one more time. I wanted to use the latest and greatest to show how great it is and how cool it's becoming. And of course, there's bugs because it hasn't been through QA yet. So let's try this again. We now see allocations. That's perfect. So if I tap on the contacts, and let's just type for, what do we call this thing? Contact, right? So if I click on the filter, and I filter through contact, I see a contact view controller, perfect, and a couple cells. Let's tap on one of these, and let's take a snapshot, because that'll make sure that it gets a perfect memory footprint at that time, and search for contact again. Now at this point, I should see a contact detail view controller. Oh, I'm not in the right. As you notice, the memory allocations have not caught up yet, which is why I don't see it. So I'm going to go back, take another snapshot, and then I'll go forward. And then if I stop this, it'll have time to catch up with its processing. As I said, this is preview alpha software. This allocation should catch up. Make sure that it is. Yes, it is crunching all of those allocations at the moment. So that'll catch up. Okay, well, since that's not catching up, we'll use the old tools. So currently, that's why I have two versions of Xamarin Studio running with the same exact project, so I can switch back and forth to our new fancy tools, which are in alpha. And if we're on the old version, we have old tools. So I'm going to use our really, really old heap shot tool, which is very ugly, and I apologize because it's so ugly and horrible, which is why we're writing a nice new Xamarin profiler, which is pretty and works a lot better. This old one does work. It's solid. It's just ugly. All right. So tap on the contacts, and it's pretty buggy too. So I take a memory snapshot. This will let us see exactly what's in memory at this point. You notice it's not real time. It doesn't keep up like the other one does. Press the button. Show me a snapshot. There we go. So now I have a snapshot, and I have all the buttons. I can search for contacts again. Oh, this one's case sensitive, so make sure you search properly. And also by default, it makes this thing super big so you can't see how many instances there are. So once again, I can't adjust the font size. I apologize, but I can see I have my contact view controller here, and there's one instance of it. Sounds right. So let's tap on a detail. Now let's take another snapshot. Tool catch up yet? Still crunching. All right. So now that I have my second one, I'm going to click on the second one, and look, we have a lot more stuff going on. We now have a context detail controller and the detail view. All right, nice. So let me press back. Now, when I press back and I take a new snapshot, I would expect the contact details to be out of memory. I just left the screen, it's been popped, I'd expect that to get garbage collected. But when I click over here, it has not been garbage collected. Now, if I do this again, let's tap on one. Now let's take another snapshot. Wait for the tool to catch up. You would expect that I would still hopefully only have one instance of it, but now I have two instances of it. Now, this is very common. Why do I have two instances of it? That doesn't make any sense. I have two instances of view and two instances of thing. If this was a view that had images or was doing stuff, I mean, you can see how you can quickly and easily run out of a battery. View controllers aren't that light. The memory footprint it shows here is inaccurate. A couple things to think about. I was going to actually bring up Sketch and draw pretty pictures for you guys during this. But there's a great talk on how iOS stuff works with the memory. So where's an empty? Just click OK. All right. So we have a nice little. I had the hotkeys. Okay, so I'm going to draw a nice little rectangle. So I'm going to do rectangles and circles. Nope, that's not a circle. What's the circle one? Oh, okay. So I press O, so I'm going to do circles and squares. All right, so let's look over here and look at what's going on. I checked this box for inverse references so I can see it backwards. So I have a contact details view controller. It creates a native object and a managed object. The managed ones are circles, native are squares. So our circle one is taking up a memory footprint of 352 bytes. That's next to nothing. If I was to use instruments and do its memory, it would show me the context detail controller and the native size, which is different. So there's always two objects created. This tool is only going to show you one, but there's always two. So I have we'll just call this one, this is our view controller. All right, so we have our view controller, and this is the managed one. And our view controller has a view, context details view. So we're going to create our view, and we're going to, so here's the view, right? Now, if we look at our references here, this is going to show us that the context details controller and I have it on inverse references, so it's showing its opposite. It's saying that this view has a reference to the view controller. And if I keep looking through here, you're noticing how it's a never-ending, I can just keep going back and forth, and they're alternating back and forth. They both have access to each other, and it's never, ever ending. It's not going away. So the problem is they hold references to each other. Now, since there's two objects, typically, if you were to think of just the native objects, if these both, there's arrows. Isn't there a quick, easy way to add arrows in here? Awesome, I thought there was. Oh, there it is, arrows. So you think about these two having access to each other, and this is the view and the view controller in native land. Once this object's done, the garbage collector can say, okay, these two just are being crazy and they hold a reference to each other, but they only hold a reference to each other. The garbage collector says mark it for deletion and these guys get cleared out, right? But you have to keep in mind that each one is two objects. the native one, and keep in mind that these also hold a reference to each other. The managed one has to be able to talk to native, and native talks to managed. So as soon as you start doing this, you can see how these start to create awesome cycles. Now in managed land, you typically, the view controller of course also has access, the view controller has access to the view, and this arrow will always be there, but this two-way one should not. You can see how this creates this circle, and the garbage collector gets confused and has no idea how to clear this thing out. Except it can't do it. Now, how did we create that cycle? We created it by passing our parent to the view controller. And we need to do that. You have to do that all the time. The view a lot of time has to proxy events back to the view controller. It's how MVC stuff works. So you can't always say, well, I don't want to assign the parent over. I can't always do that. There's two ways to handle this. One, and we'll show both of these. One is to go override will appear, and on view will appear. Here we have to set things up a little bit. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong view controller. Joys of nesting classes in the same file. All right, so we'll put this one here, and I'm also gonna, I normally will just do contact. I do the lowercase one, so that way I don't have to deal with casting it, because I'm lazy. All right, so on view will appear, I can do view dot parent equals this. And will disappear. I'll do on view did disappear. Oops. View dot parent equals null. All right. So now let's profile this thing again and see what's going on. So I can't read. So why is the question I was asked, well, while this thing runs, I'll tell it, why is the managed garbage collector aware of native objects? It has to be. There's a whole talk, oops, sorry, my screensaver came on. There's a whole talk on this there's one at both evolves that you can go and watch. They'll talk a lot more detail about this. But if you think about how a view controller, these managed things work, right? If I do view, if I try calling a property over, and I want to go this dot, for example, edges for extended layout, the managed object has to know about the native objects, or else it can't set that property edges for extended layout on the native object. It has to communicate that back and forth. If you don't do that, they don't have a way to talk, so they have to be connected and they have to know about each other. The reference count gets increased each time. So doing what I just did with this, if I remove this part here and I just say, and I just set it to where on will appear and on will disappear, we set these, that takes care of it. So let's do run, or stop this guy first. Is that under projects? Profile mono. Oops. One word to the wise, quit the heap shot each time, or else it won't work. You'll have issues. So just quit it between each run. So let's run this again, and let's see what happens when we do it. Like I said, this is one way to fix it. It works great, but there's even more elegant ways to fix it, which we'll look at as well. So let's just go to contacts. Let's click on a detail. If I click snapshot, we should get a snapshot popping up. And if I go to all objects and I search for contact, okay, I can scroll way over to make this manageable. All right, and did the profiler never caught up? Oh well. All right, so we have one. Let's click back and let's do it again. And now let's do a snapshot. And hopefully, at this point, yay, I only have one. At this point, I would have had two with our old code. Now, that's nice and cool and all, but sometimes you don't want to have to just override these each time. So we're going to instead I just deleted that setting on, yeah, I just removed that setting. Something that's really nice to do is you can also use a weak delegate. So I'm just going to refactor this code a little bit, and I'm going to turn it into a property. Now you can also do a weak reference. All right. Now what I can do is when you set this thing, parent equals new weak reference, and I'm going to pass in the value. Okay, and now I just do parent dot target as, there we go. So now by changing that, and sorry, my questions thing is not showing me everything, so I don't see, I'm not seeing all these questions pop up. I don't know how to make that view bigger. Oh, I can pop it out and then I can make it bigger. Let's see if that'll work. Okay, perfect. And then our native objects wrapped in. So if you notice, one thing with this, all managed objects have this dot handle. That's the handle to the native object. So that's how we p invoke back and forth. So that's actually just an int ptr, and so yeah, you can then, it's a handle to it. So that's how that happens. And nothing's really hidden. It's just all the native objects are just, we always create a managed wrapper as well. That's what we're dealing with. This C# code is the manage object. So every time you create an object in C#, it is always going to have a managed object and a, which is just the method that you use to invoke, and then also the native object. Okay, but so hopefully that answers your question. All right, so I have this now same exact change where I went and I go context details view controller, and I'm just using this weak reference. This weak reference is saying, yes, there's a reference, but don't hold it in memory because of this. So if I was to run this code again, let's kill our trusty heap shot. I can profile mono again. And I might try our new profile again because I was using it this morning and it didn't take that long. So I'm going to quit it and we'll try it again because it is a lot cleaner. And we'll show you that it doesn't show you the exact same reason why it's still around as well as the old one does yet. That's being built because that it's early preview. It's not done yet. I actually spoke to the profiler team, and they've already got some of the code done for it, but they're waiting on getting the UI finished for it to do the same exact thing I'm doing here. So we have our contacts. If I go back and forth, I'm just quickly going back and forth, navigating around a bunch of times. Now if I click snapshot, I should only have one. And so this is a very common thing that happens. It's really easy to do. Just doing the parent and doing a weak delegate is one place that happens. Most of the time when I see this, it happens even more than passing along a parent object. It has to do with events. Events are going to destroy you as far as this goes. And I'm going to jump back over while I'm waiting for, oh, heap shot finally caught up. So now if I look at contact, I search, I only have one. Perfect. That's exactly what I would expect to see. Only one. All right. So now let's talk about an event. Let's just say our view is a button instead, and we're doing an anonymous function. I love anonymous functions. I use them all the time. So we create an anonymous function, which creates a new managed object, which people might not realize that. But whenever you do this code right here, this creates an anonymous function. Our garbage collector is getting better at fixing some of these, like with this button. But what it does is it creates a new thing, which is our delegate. It's this method is the object. So we now have our delegate. So our delegate is here, and it gets called, and let's throw some new fancy arrows in here. Our arrow goes to here. Now, since we have now cleaned up our code, this is what our stuff looks like. these two have a reference to each other, so we know it can be cleared out. How do you use? I'll make this bigger. I'm guessing you guys can see everything. The text doesn't quite matter. And sorry, I am not used to Sketch at all. Our designers, if they watch this, are probably going to laugh at me. But hey, there we go. How do I move this? This is embarrassing. Okay, I'm going to click right here, and that zooms it nicely. All right, so we have our view controller, which has our manage stuff. You can see how, because of the directions of these arrows, our garbage collector can say, kill these two. These just have a reference this way, so I know I can kill this off. And even so, with our anonymous delegate, typically it can say, all right, I can clean this thing up. But what happens most of the time is you do something like parent.save, or even more common is, let's just say I didn't have my save button as a variable here, and I was just doing oh, sorry, I didn't have to delete all that, write all that. So you would go with this, and then helps to put semicolons, and then autocomplete works again. All right, so I have my save button here, and I want to change the, instead of saving, I'm just going to do save.text. And we've all seen the sample to where you now do dot set title int count equals 0. Tap count, and then we're just going to do count plus plus, comma, UI control state dot normal, and then I'm going to start this as 1. All right. So now let's run this again. So I'm going to go project profile mono again. And if we profile this, oh, I didn't kill the heap shot. Sorry. Try again. Like I said, our profile tool is awesome. It's still really early stages, but it is coming along, and we'll replace all this functionality so you'll never have to use this horrible snapshot tool again, or heap shot tool. But it works and it functions well. All right, so I take a snapshot. We have one, right? So now if I browse down to my, something that's really annoying with this thing is, best app ever, contact details view controller, right? So I have my contacts details view controller, and why am I not seeing its button? All right, let me bounce and forth, go back and forth a couple times. Let's take another snapshot. If you're using the new and improved SGen stuff, it is a lot better at finding this stuff. So now let's just do, and it can resolve some of this a little bit better. Okay, still only 1, so I'm not properly showing this bug. But basically, it's not happening in this instance. I don't want to dig a little bit more to find it, but it's really easy at this point too. As soon as you add that method in here that is calling back to your constructor area, this variable does not exist inside of this object. So now it adds a reference, and or if you do like this dot and you call a method, so we have now added a reference in this manage object back. And so we start creating more of these cycles. And it's really, really, really easy to create these. So you want to be careful with those. So fair warning, be careful with those. It's really, really easy to create those cycles. And this sample is not complex enough, but the moment your app becomes complex and you start having some of these anonymous delegates like that, it can cause you issues. So the real trick, the way to fix this is instead of doing this dot click, you would do sender as UI, we'll do it as UI button because it really is UI button dot super view, which the button super view is our context details as that, and now we can call dot click. The reason that this is safe and this isn't is it doesn't need to reference back to the original method and back to the original view. So if you're doing anonymous, don't reference anything outside the scope of sender and the event args, or else you can easily cause these circular references. Or the other way is, instead of doing them as anonymous functions, you can easily just do touch up inside and do them as old school events. Yay. And now you can subscribe and unsubscribe this. So now you can have a method that tells it to clean up its view. So when view will disappear, you would tell it to wire up the events. And on view will appear, you'd wire up events. And on view will disappear, you'll unhook those events, which instantly cleans these things up. So events are like one of the #1 killers I see with memory references, or creating these memory cycles to where stuff just can't be cleared out. So definitely make sure you clean up your events. That is the #1 killer I see. But when you're not doing that, try and use weak delegates and or break those cycles. Really, really easy on a master details type screen like this, where you're going to a details to cause these loops that just can't be cleared out by the GC. So is find view by ID a solution in this case? Yes, you could use find view by, if you're on Android, you could use find view by ID to pull out a reference at the time. Having references isn't bad. You need to have references. It's something you need to do. You just need to be smart about it and make sure that you're not creating these cycles. It takes a little bit of time to start thinking of your code as really looking like this. So, it would be great if there was a graphical way to, and the other question is there a graphical way to show this? Unfortunately, no. Right now, you'll notice our tooling doesn't know the managed or the native objects, and Xcode's tooling doesn't know the managed objects. So there's not really anything right now that shows that. It wouldn't be hard to create something like that. You could do it just knowing that if it's a native object and if it's subclasses from either, sorry, closing a door, my dog's barking. If it's subclasses from either Java objects or the iOS objects, that it does create that extra one in the back end that you could then just know. But no, there's no graphical tool to show it. And yeah, you could, like I said, you could use the find view. To answer the other question, you could use find view by ID to pull out a reference inside a method. But it's writing a lot of extra code when you can just be safe about it, and it is always good to unwire events. So definitely unwire events. It's really good. And is there an expected release date for the new profile in the stable channel? I have no idea. I really don't know. Sorry, I don't even know who to ask that. Like I said, there's still more things that need to come into it. And really quick, just for the profiling stuff, you can use the stable iOS and Android to do the profiling. You just need the Xamarin Studio Alpha to run it to do the profiling, and it would work. And would Visual Studio profiling tools work on Xamarin? No, those don't work. It doesn't understand it. So right now I've gone through and explained most of some of the big things to watch out for. Definitely image sizes are things you should look for. Use the profiling tools to find why is my screen slow. That's definitely the thing to deal with. Oh, yeah, I just got asked a question about the actions and events. So one thing I like about actions and events, So let's just say our view controller, we put, we don't want to have references to our parent. Let me just show this. We delete our parent, right? We have a public event handler. Yeah, I'm doing that right. And we're just going to call this thing save. All right. So we have our save. So here we're going to do view.save plus equals, right? Let's just say I want to clear out everything on the save at this point because I want to do it. I don't have access to this delegate, so I can't just do view.save equals null. That's not going to work. It's just not going to work at all. You can write a funky method on this end that would, you can do, let's make this void clear events, and it has to know about all your events, and you do var data equals save.get invocation list for each var e in data save dot minus equal, oops, sorry, save minus equals e. You can do this because the view can clear out its own events and then do one of those. That type of stuff works for clearing out events. But if we were to instantly just change this to action, I can still do plus equals if I wanted, but I can now do view.save equals null. So actions allow you to kill these things from anywhere. So any view, my view controller knows it's time to kill this thing out. I just say view.save equals null. I have now severed this tie. So I don't have to deal with minus equaling and keeping references. And so a lot of times I do this on a details thing. On when this view is about to disappear, I know it's being destroyed. I know it's being done. So I can just do on just do the override disappear, or view did disappear. I can just do view.save equals null. I just cleared out that reference. So that's what's really cool about actions versus events. You can just kill it, and killing it is awesome. So that's why I recommend actions over events. Thanks for reminding me to bring that back up. It says, and will that be GC'd at some point? I'm not sure what you mean by, and will that be GC'd? What object are we talking about? The one thing that was nice about me doing this, when you null this out, it's the same as now saying delete this arrow. And I can't figure out how to select that arrow. As I said, this is embarrassing how bad I am. Oh, there we go. So I deleted that arrow. So when I nulled that out, now this object's just hanging there by itself, so it will be GC'd. And it just stops with some of these cycles. And actually, sorry, that was the one that I deleted the wrong arrow. By having that anonymous delegate there, it added an arrow going this way, which creates that cycle. So it's deleting this one for us. So yes, now that stuff can be, by nulling it out, it can now be GC'd. I want to have that as, I just spelled action wrong. There we go. Now our actions work. Okay, so that's why I like actions over events. And you still, if you wanted, you could just still do object for the sender, and then, I don't know, in this case, I could send back over a string for the first name. So now the first name changed, pass that along. Yay, everything's good in the world. So you can pass things along. So now when I would call that action, I would just do save this, comma, first name dot text. So now it passes that data along. All right. I think we're towards the end of the session. I've covered most of the things I wanted to. As I said, definitely watch out for the memory stuff. Is a really easy thing to snare yourself with. Watch out for causing these cycles. You can use the heap shot tool to see them. You can also use our new profiler to see them. It does show you them. It doesn't show you why they're there specifically, but it'll give you a stack trace, which will give you kind of an idea of where to look. So that covered those, definitely look into making sure you're not using images that are too big. Things like that's a really, really big, instantly can crash your app, especially on Android. iOS does a better job of handling giant images. It won't crash, it just gets slow. Android is just going to crash on you. So definitely try to use appropriate sized images. You'll see in the T-shirt app, we actually request from the server ones that match the width of the screen, so that way we're not getting giant iPad size ones for an iPhone. And it also takes care of Retina. It only gets Retina ones on Retina screens. So just things like that definitely do help. But definitely watch out for these cycles and use the tooling to find your performance issues. That's going to be your best bet. Yes, a lot of times you're doing something wrong, but what you're doing wrong is sometimes a compound of 10 little things. So using the tooling will tell you what you're doing wrong rather than you trying to read your code, add in console.write lines to check the timing and trying to guess. That's just a horrible way to work. All right, I have another question. While navigating using a table view controller, we usually new up a new target view when the table cells click. Is there a performance and memory impact by doing this constantly? No, it's not wrong at all. In this case, you see that I'm doing that as well. I am newing it up on tap. If it's a very heavy view controller, like let's just say you're building a, I don't know, depending on what you're doing, if the view controller you're pushing is heavy and it's one that you're going to be you're doing a lot, it's always better memory-wise to reuse a view than it is to create and let the garbage collector kill it. It's just the more objects you have in memory, the more it has to comb through the tree to figure out what needs to be removed. So less objects is always better. So if it is something like a constant detail, like if you're doing a mail app, like if I was rewriting the iOS mail app, if I tap on an email to see the detail of that email, I'm going to reuse that view. I'm not going to new a new one up each time. It's a heavy view. You're rendering a lot of crazy text in there. You could be rendering images in there. It's a lot easier just to clear it out and reuse it. It's a little bit more code to reuse it, but it's easier. And let's just say you have these issues with these cycles and you don't want to worry about newing up your events and unsubscribing it. If you've only got one that you're never expecting to be garbage collected, it's not going to be an issue anyway. You only ever have one. And having one view typically is not an issue. You probably won't run out of memory by having one extra view hanging around. And it's one you're constantly using anyway. So it depends on the app and what you're doing. If it's something they rarely do, no point. Just let it be garbage collecting, create a new one when you need it. All right. Any other questions?
Awesome. I think we're good, James. Thank you so much. This was very informative and very helpful.
Yes, no problem. Thanks, guys. It was a blast.